Morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to do our classic slow start for today. So, as everyone grabs their coffee and possibly their awesome Land Development Academy mugs, I'm just going to be here welcoming y'all. And we're happy to have you with us. I'm not sure what session we're on for 2026. We've done a few, but we're still in the early part of the year. And thank you all again for being here. I just use this time to promote, our Land Development Academy mugs that we've got. I see a lot of folks that come, and if you've attended more than one session, if you've attended two or more sessions and you're not a city staff member, come on down to the PDC, and we would love to give you one of our commemorative mugs that um, just shows that you've been a part of the Land Development Academy, which is ever growing. And then also for anyone on the call who is presenting or has presented with us, you also should get a mug. So message me if you want one and you haven't gotten yours yet, because we appreciate all of our subject matter experts that are with us. So I'll go ahead and get started with my little intro spiel. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Bianca Machuda, and I am a community engagement specialist with the Land Development Academy. Um, I work with Austin Development Services, and again, just glad to have you all here. Last fall, we learned about water quality requirements and drainage requirements with Kenna Pierce of Development Services. And today we're going to learn from Matt Holland of Watershed Protection all about the drainage requirements specifically for residential infill. We do have Kenna on the call, Lindy on the call to help us out with any questions that might come up. And then I've also got EC as backup in case any tech issues arise. I've had a little bit of a jumpy connection today. Um, so if you don't know, the Land Development Academy sessions offer a deeper look at the site plan review process, and we do have experts from across the City of Austin departments who work with site plans. Um, if you're here with a group of people, as in if you're more than a single person viewing, go ahead and enter into the chat box how many people are in your group today. That way we can get an accurate count of our attendance. If you're a single person, you don't have to mention it, but just, if it looks like it's one entity, but there's actually five people with you, let us know. So before we get started, I'll review our engagement format for today. We have an hour set aside for the program, and we'll start with a presentation by Matt, and we'll close with a question and answer session. Um, while Matt is presenting, you can enter your questions into the Q&A bank at any time. It's at the bottom of your screen. It's different from the chat, so it's a way that we kind of organize our questions. Or you can hang on and ask your question live during the Q&A portion at the end by using the raised hand function, which is also at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any issues with those functions, feel free to chat one of our meeting hosts and we can troubleshoot with you. While we hope to be able to answer all of your questions, if there are any that we don't have the information for or we don't have the time for, we will post a follow-up response. And I'd also like to note that we are recording today's session, and you will all receive a link to the presentation and the recording as soon as those are ready. So that's all I've got for our intro, and I'm going to hand it over to Matt Holland, who's going to kick it off.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. This is a really interesting topic. It's got a lot of interesting detail. I'll try to get through it fast enough that we have time for some questions, but definitely we'll try to also lay this out well so that you can understand the various components. Um, So I'm going to talk about the main conversation is going to be about what we call the infill ordinance. It has to do with some drainage changes in our land development code for small scale, what we call residential infill projects. But I'm going to start by talking about prior development patterns that kind of triggered the need for this ordinance, um, along with the structure of the code at the time. And I will briefly run through the two home ordinances. There's a phase one and a phase two. And Lindy Garwood is here uh, uh, to also help answer questions on that one. She did a fantastic presentation last year at the ACEA conference. And I've actually borrowed some slides from her presentation, and she's a wealth of information about those two ordinances. But anyway, I'll give you an overview because they do plug into what the infill ordinance is attempting to do. It gives you some good background. And then I'll talk about, of course, the infill ordinance itself. It actually sort of has a precursor, the site plan light part one ordinance. But then the main event will be talking about the drainage implications of that. And then we'll go to questions. I'm gonna start with these kind of development patterns we see in Austin. Like many cities in the United States, Austin kind of features some land development patterns that were baked in the 50s and later, that have extensive areas of single family residential housing that's shown in kind of the classic yellow here on this map. Single family residential. This is just a sample area of town, a little bit north of Miller redevelopment, probably in Windsor Park. But then you can also see these kind of corridor areas along major highways and so forth that have a lot of commercial, and that's where a lot of the multifamily is. And so the multifamilies generally in Austin has kind of, thanks to some code changes made, I think, back in the early 90s, it was a lot harder to make a threeplex or a fourplex or a missing middle small scale multifamily project due to a number of factors, but some of them had to do with our land development code itself. They were in a way not attempting to do this, I don't think, but it was basically sort of biasing, making things easier to just build a single house or duplex in these yellow areas, light yellow areas, and then building a multifamily project of some scale is relatively straightforward in these large orange rectangles. And so here's a couple of just quick glimpse of what these projects look like. Here's an example single family subdivision project, just randomly chosen, but basically went in relatively recently. But here's 137 single family homes on this almost 30-acre land parcel up in North Austin. Here it is in an aerial view, and you can see the key here to me is that of course, when you put a full-blown subdivision with a lot of lots in, you have to build the public roads, the rights of way, and that includes all the drainage pipes. And then the drainage pipes drain to water quality and detention ponds. And so that's our kind of full meal deal of things that you need to do when you build in Austin. If you build a major residential subdivision, you're going to provide all that infrastructure. The infill ordinance we're going to talk about in a little bit is literally the projects that are not building infrastructure like that. They're building much smaller scale. And so you'll see this little bit wonky number of 17,780 square feet. I can answer that in the Q&A about why that number I'll try to slip it in at some point. But that was the threshold that the council chose in the infill ordinance to say, you know what, if you're less than 17,780 square feet, you don't have to do the land development code provisions for drainage. You don't have to provide, say, a detention pond. You don't even have to provide the calculations for it. So I wanted to show in this bigger subdivision what that scale looked like. And in this case, it's just a random sample, but it's about 3 homes in that scale. And then on the other threshold that we'll talk about is 1 acre. If you're larger than an acre, you're not going to be able to use the infill ordinance to use what we call the modified drainage standards. So you do the standard full-blown drainage analysis and everything if you're above an acre. But I wanted to show you what it looks like on this. I'm going to recount it. I think it's like 9 in this case, and it could be different depending on your situation. But anyway, it's around 8 or 9 lots on this one. And then on the multifamily side, we're seeing a lot of these kind of Texas wrap, Texas donut projects around town. They're fantastic at providing housing along corridors. There's a parking garage in the interior, and it's wrapped with housing. This has provided a lot more housing in Austin. So this is a significant scale. This is a 2 and a third acre parcel. It's got 210 units, and so here this is the site plan for it, showing the drainage uh, uh, components here, and it's got a water quality and detention ponds that were put in to this project and so forth. So you've got 200 units. You've got more extensive infrastructure put in on the drainage side. So I'm going to show you this slide later on again, but just to kind of a quick overview, this is going to show you an example from Central Austin. I think this is Brentwood neighborhood, but it doesn't matter. There's many that look a lot like this same scale. These lots are actually slightly larger than some other areas of town, but they're not huge. Um, and in fact, so just for scale, this is 150-foot deep lots. And so a lot of you guys remember in the Home 1 and Home 2 conversations, we talked a lot about the number 5750. That was the old number of the minimum lot size in Austin. And now it still has relevance. If your lot is not 5750 or greater, you cannot build more than one unit on your property, but you can actually go smaller than 5750 at this time. But you can see in this particular neighborhood, that's a little smaller than the lots that were going in. I think I may have gotten this number from Lindy at one point, but and the planners over in the planning department. But the average citywide lot is around 9,000 square feet. So this just shows you that this particular neighborhood, that's kind of what a lot of these lots look like. And then there's that magical 17,780 number again, and it shows up. And this is you can see it's kind of crossing this lot line here. This is just superimposed. This lot is not 17,780. The square is the red square, and that actually derives from the fact that our water quality code says that if you have less than 8,000 square feet of impervious cover on your lot, then you do not have to provide a water quality control for your land development if you have less than 8,000 square feet. So if you do the wonky math on it and ratio it from 45% impervious cover max in this case for these residential subdivisions with this particular type of zoning, you get a lot that's about 17,780 in size. Anything less than that's not going to have water quality control. We're actually talking about drainage here, which is slightly different. Talking about detention ponds and other drainage aspects. So you wouldn't. And so we basically chose those numbers to be the same. So if you're not going to have water, you wouldn't have a water quality pond, and in this case, in a little while we'll talk about the infill ordinance, allowing you to not have or even to look into whether you need a detention pond. Another number you'll see pop up in this presentation is a half an acre. It's 21,780 square feet. This is more relevant to site plan light / small scale missing middle multifamily. And then finally, there's the 1 acre size. You can see, at least in this particular neighborhood, that's 4 or 5 lots in size, etc. And anyway, I'll go back through this again in a little while, but I wanted you guys to see the scale. And if you're redeveloping one of these lots, if you're re-subdividing one of these lots, you're not providing the streets, the drainage and so forth. Although with a site plan light project, you would potentially have a drainage connection in the public right of way. And then here's that 1,800 square foot minimum lot size that was approved by council with Home 2, just for scale. All right, so I'm going to briefly go through Home 1 and Home 2. They're a little bit different. Phase 1, and this slide, which again, Bianca will send it out to everybody so you have this information. And so I'm not going to go through each line item on all of these. But basically, council is saying, look, we want more options. We don't want to just have single family and duplex only with large scale multifamily, and that's it. How do we have smaller, more diverse housing types? And so they passed this ordinance. Phase 1 passed in December of 23, and then phase 2 shortly after in May of 2024 passed. And I'll just go through it. For home, it's just looking at zoning types of SF1, SF2, and SF3. If you're SF4A, for instance, doesn't apply. And you'll see there's a heck of a lot of lots out there that have this zoning designation. So basically, Home 1 just says, look, in the old days, you could either have only one unit per lot if you had SF1 or 2 zoning, and if you had SF3 zoning, you could have an ADU or second unit, et cetera, duplex. But home one clarifies or updates it so that you can actually have on any of these 150 something thousand lots, you could potentially build up to 3 units. On phase two, um, it takes that same concept and says, well, wait a minute, we don't necessarily want to have folks either own the entire thing themselves or condoize it. Let's make it so that you can more easily subdivide it. You could subdivide it before home one and two, but the lot sizes are probably going to block you in certain cases, and then the process of providing detention would be a barrier for a lot of these because at the time of the phase two home, there was no clarification that say below 17,780 square feet, you don't have to have flood detention. So this project here that you see on the screen, or obviously the cartoon, would have to kind of go through the exercise in our code of seeing whether or not you need detention. That's a super small scale and probably not appropriate, and that's what the infill ordinance was all about. All right, so quick overview of home one itself, allowing up to 3 units. Has some other information on here. I'm actually glad to go back through this if people have more questions um, about home one or home two, but I don't want to spend too much time because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about the infill ordinance. But you'll have these as a resource as well, and I'm very happy to go back to any of these slides as I go through them. So maybe down on the bottom of each slide, it has the slide number, and we can always return to those. All right, on home one on the land uses, you can kind of see the kind of projects that are going to go in there. Again, SF1, SF2, SF3 only, 2 unit duplex and 3 unit residential. You can use all of those things, and you can look at this map. You can see how extensive these lots are scattered across the city, and there are over 150,000 single family SF1, SF2, SF3 lots. All right, let's go to home two, and that's where we're subdividing. And so the idea was that somebody doesn't have to own the entire a larger lot to own a property and own a home in Austin, and to make the process a little more straightforward than some folks are concerned about the condomization process. So anyway, there's more information on here. This is excellent stuff from Lindy, and I'll leave it for more discussion later if folks have more specific questions about this. All right, and basically, home two basically says if you're less than 50 square feet, 5,750 square feet, but more than 1,800 square feet, then you can make a lot that small, and it will only have 1 unit on it. If it's larger than 5,750, then you can potentially put up to 3 units on those lots. All right, and so subdivision is a big part of the infill ordinance, and so what we were trying to do with home two is allow people to have smaller lots actually subdivided, not necessarily just from some sort of condo regime or no subdivision or delineation at all, subdelineation at all. And so that was so the infill ordinance really helps with that. All right, here we are, infill ordinance. So the precursor to the infill ordinance was an ordinance that kind of didn't have as much fanfare, and it was referred to as the Site Plan Light Part 1, very affectionately, very very memorable. But basically, Site Plan Light is obviously referring to the site plan process where where a multifamily project would be designed and submitted by the applicant into our review staff as through the site plan process. Well, the site plan process was really designed, as you saw in the early works, for those big subdivisions, for the big multifamily. Big subdivision process, the big multifamily, and so you have there's quite a few steps to take, and we actually had some of our stakeholders come forward and say, look, you only have to do 5 or 6 things if you do a building permit, but then if you go to a site plan or a subdivision, you got to do many more, and it's a lot more expensive and it takes a lot more time. And so council was sympathetic to that, and they said, look, we really do want these 3-plexes and 4-plexes, and so and we also want 5 to 16 unit projects, and that's going to be the infill ordinance focus. But just to kind of get the ball rolling, they said, look, if you're 3 or 4 units in size, just do the same process as you would do for the residential plan review if you're building a single home or a duplex or 2 unit project. So that has already gone through and in place. So now, drum roll, the actual the main topic here, the infill ordinance. This was adopted almost exactly a year ago and a week. I think the effective date was probably somewhere around now or a little bit later. I think we had to move it back a little just to get things rolling. But obviously, it's applicable now, and it applies to um, infill subdivisions, should have put the word re in front of that, re subdivisions and site plan multifamily projects with 5 to 16 units. If you have 17 or more units, you don't apply. It does not doesn't apply to your project. So, quick summary applies to re subdivisions and multifamily up to 16 units. The heart of it has to do with this thing called the modified drainage standards option for drainage. And the idea was to say, look, these projects resemble those little, smaller lot single family homes. They're often right next door. And so, if those don't have to go through this whole full package of drainage requirements, let's scale the infill projects to this something similar or the same. And so, in one stroke of a pen, with that 17,780 number in there, that if your lot is less than 17 at or less than 17,780 square feet, that's 0.41 acres, then you do not have to comply with the no adverse impact and detention and all the other stuff that we do to require for larger projects. And it makes sense for a larger project. We're pretty concerned about that amount of drainage, amount of water, amount of post project flood peak flows that come off those projects. We want people to look at that stuff if they're larger. But if you're smaller than that, you're really looking like you're a heck of a lot like the surrounding single family lots that aren't required to have that. And we're not seeing that the same level of drainage concern from those. For those, I'll keep stressing this, but if you're in between that, if you're in between 17,780 and up to an acre, and you're a re-subdivision, or really any site plan light from 0 acres, obviously it's theoretical, up to a 1 acre, then you're gonna be using the modified drainage standards, and I'll show you some kind of cartoony pictures that kind of walk you through what that means. But our idea was Mother Nature is still out there, landforms are still out there, topography is still out there. So if you have a site that's really challenging and drains to your neighbors, we wanted you to still pay attention to those things, because that scale between those is large enough that you want to make sure that things go well. So we have kind of a three tiered process. So here it is, a quick handy summary table. Thank you, Lindy. This shows that these two basic types. There's the re-subdivision and there's the site plan. We kind of break it out within the re-subs, less than 17,780. No drainage requirements, so you're off the hook. There's no drainage requirements for you from this section of our land development code. Does that mean you don't care about drainage and you just build your project? No, you're going to want to make sure that your house has adequate freeboard from flooding and all the other things that you want to do if you're elevation, and you want to make sure that the drainage comes off your site and doesn't harm your neighbors and so forth. There's state law that says that you have to do that, and you could actually get sued if you don't do a good job of that. And so you want to make sure that that goes well. But we, the city, have made the decision through this process, and council passed this saying that we're not going to hold you to these drainage requirements that have all the detailed engineering and detention and so forth. All right, so if you are a re-subdivision, you're greater than 17,780 and up to an acre, then you have this following three-tiered process, and the same thing goes with any site plan like project all the way up to 1 acre, no matter how small. So if you have really straightforward topography and your drainage is just going to kind of literally fall down into the streets around you, the rights of way around you, or a public storm drainage system like a creek or a drainage way itself, then you're not going to have to. You're going to show a very simple drainage plan that pretty much anybody could that could carefully put together and submit. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we've got Kenna Pierce here, who is our supervising engineer for drainage and water quality review, and she has a wealth of knowledge. She's already seen projects like these come in, and she'll be able to answer more detailed questions than I can about that. But we are seeing some, questions asked about about this three-tiered system. So straightforward drainage, no problem. A very simplified version that doesn't have the same level of technical expertise needed. And then if you need to regrade your drainage on your site, then you are going to have to use some form of engineered drainage. You won't have to do a detention pond, but you will need to regrade. You'll need to use a more careful engineered design. And then finally, for the most challenging sites, and frankly, the ones that would cause the most drainage distress to their neighbors, you're going to continue to have to use on-site detention. So I'm gonna go through this. I spared you guys most of the code on this, but I wanted to show you a few things on this. This is the new infill ordinance part of the code, the code language, and it talks about not exceeding 1 acre. So that's really key. If you're bigger than an acre, can't use it. And so we're expecting these 5 to 60 dwelling units to fall in these kinds of zoning classes. SF.
Hey, looks like we have some technical difficulties. Please stand by. All right, y'all. Thanks for your patience as we continue on. We haven't gotten a hold of Matt, so we'll continue with the presentation. Matt will join us once he's able to get back on. Appreciate y'all's patience.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep,
Yes.
that's
good. Excellent. So I was not prepared to necessarily do the presentation, but I'm familiar with the content. And so since Matt's not available, I'm going to go ahead and do the presentation as I know it and ad lib and wing it a little bit. So please forgive me if I'm stumbling a little bit as I go through the slides. But of course, we'll continue to, hopefully Matt will join and he'll take back over. But in the meantime, I don't want to leave everyone just waiting. And then if you have questions, feel free to put them in the question box.
yeah. Why don't you go ahead and continue?
Okay. I'll just start with applicability. So a new definition was added to our definition section of the Land Development Code, and it's for residential infill project, which has kind of two different designations. Both of them cannot exceed an acre in size, but the first one is A, 5 to 16 dwelling units, and that is really geared towards site plan light or the missing middle multifamily size projects. And then the second type of infill project are re-subdivisions of property that's zoned SF1, SF2, SF3, includes only land that was originally platted as a residential subdivision and does not require a plat vacation. So basically what this means is that it's a property that has already been platted as a single family residential. It's going to be continued as a single family residential, whether it has 1, 2, or 3 units. All of that is considered single family residential. And you're just replatting the lines of that existing subdivision to have smaller parcels. So you might have an existing 5750 tract that has 3 units on it, and you want to divide that into smaller tracts so that they're fee simple units, where each unit is on its own individual lot, but it was the original plat was already residential. And then you can't have a plat vacation where you basically go back to raw land or a greenfield situation where you remove all of the pre-existing subdivision elements. You have to be able to start from the existing residential subdivision tract. And then looking at the small project designation, as part of the benefit of being a residential infill project, you are also allowed to submit what's considered a small project site plan, which is really an opportunity to kind of have a reduced fee, a little bit quicker timeline, and the notification requirements are different. And so it just kind of is a more streamlined site plan process than if you have a full site plan for more than 16 units or you're over an acre and a half in size. Um, there is some like opportunities to waive certain specific regulations, but that's a kind of a project by project base and is at the discretion of the director. And so, but the reduced fees, the reduced timeline, um, and the notification changes are all kind of baked in as a given as part of the small projects program. And then again, if you notice on the previous slide, it was a residential infill project is for not cannot exceed an acre in size. For the small projects, it's for a project that doesn't exceed 1.5 acres. And so you can be a little bit bigger project and still take advantage of this small project designation, even though you may not get the same exact benefits of being a residential infill project, you still get to be considered a small project. Yeah, so this yeah, does not refer to the drainage standards, which are limited to that 1 acre, but instead allows for a little bit larger projects with 5 to 16 units, but on larger land tracts to be small projects. Okay, so what the infill ordinance does and does not do. It really focuses on preventing a lot to lot flooding. So it's not really talking about local or creek flooding, or it's not really addressing large scale flooding changes. It's really trying to address where your lot might, the effects of what your drainage on your lot might do to a neighboring lot. And so that's why, as Matt was previously talking about, that if your lot naturally drains to the street, you if your lot naturally drains to the street, you qualify. But if your lot drains to your neighbors, you might have to do some grading. And if you can't do the grading, you might not be able to use this program. That's why is because it's really focused on that lot to lot. Can you change your topography to go to the street? Do you naturally go to the street? And if not, then it's not addressing that lot to lot flooding. It doesn't allow an increase in impervious cover. It doesn't change what the impervious cover regulations are. All of that remains the same based on what your underlying zoning district is. But it's really about how it drains, not necessarily how the water infiltrates into the ground. And then also there's no change to our floodplain regulations. So those continue to apply as required, and the number of units that you can build within the floodplain also remains the same, and what you can build within the floodplain and how high you can build within the floodplain, all of that remains exactly the same. And that's because the floodplains are more of a life safety issue, and we want to make sure that we keep our floodplains in a safe condition. Let's see. Okay, so this is an example of a Home One project where previously there was a single house. The Home One project used a building permit and built 2 individual houses on 1 lot. This is an example of a Home Two project. It's the same single family house that was redeveloped into 2 different houses. The difference is there is a lot line between the houses, and these are what's called fee simple. So this house is on one lot and this house is on the other. This requires a subdivision because this is under 17,000 square feet. Um, it qualifies for the infill plat regulations, and it would not be required to do drainage because it falls within under that minimum size threshold because this is an average lot size here in Austin. Um, and then there are over 100,000 lots that are eligible for this throughout the city, um, which is great. So site plan light multifamily. This is up to an acre for infill projects. You can see an example of one of these type of projects right here, where it was kind of a standard single family um, size lot that they combined to allow for this slightly larger development. And um, this is what's called missing middle. So it's that 5 to 16 units. This is not on individual or lots. This is all on one single lot, and they're either rentals or a condo regime. There's about 7,800 lots that are up to an acre that can potentially take advantage of the infill ordinance where drainage allowances, where if it's draining the correct way or if you're able to grade the correct direction, you can take advantage of the reduced drainage standards of the infill ordinance. This one is a particular one for 10 units on half an acre, just for reference. So this is kind of what I was previously discussing, where the home two is on individual lots. There's no difference in drainage requirements for the building permit or the subdivision because it's the same footprint. So no drainage study or on-site detention, as long as the lot is less than 17,780 square feet. Now for lots that are greater than 17,780 square feet in 1 acre, the scale is large enough that you need to then look at the drainage. And that's when we again start looking at which way does the grade, which way does which way is the grading sending the drainage to the street, or whether it's sending it to your neighbor. Can you regrade the project or not? And so in this example, there's about 3,500 lots that fall within this size range. And it kind of would depend on how the drainage looked as to whether you can use the infill ordinance. In this particular example, the runoff comes from this street or from this portion of the lot and this portion to the public right of way, which means it does naturally flow to the right of way, which means that you would just have the simple drainage plan showing the existing conditions, the proposed conditions, and then a building permit. You would not have to have the engineering report or a detention pond or RSMP. Now, if you have a lot with surface that needs to be graded to the road, in this instance where it actually drains to the neighbors, you need to regrade your property to where the runoff actually runs to the public right of way. And so you could regrade your property, and then you would again have to have some existing and proposed grading, some engineering and RSMP, with the grading reviewed by water protection, Austin Water Protection. Oh, sorry. That is a change. The RSMP payment goes away. I apologize. And so then you just have the existing grading and proposed grading, and the grading is reviewed by development services. So yes, so that's a great change that the RSMP payment goes away. And I just saw that Matt returned. And so if you're ready, Matt, I am happy to give it back to you. And again, thank you everyone for the patience as I kind of worked through these slides in real time. I appreciate everyone's patience.
All right. I owe Lindy big time here. I have no idea where I ended. I successfully gave the speech to myself, apparently. So I am in your debt, guys. Everybody out in TV land as well. What do you want? What do you guys want to do in terms of like finishing this out? We got 8 minutes. I'm happy to go through the rest of it. Looks like you went pretty far through it.
As I say, if you want to just keep going, I can just keep
Yeah.
sharing my screen and you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
talk through it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead and click to the next slide. I'll just do the click.
Great.
Okay. Click it more times. This was just showing that you can't actually. You have to pay attention to lot lines when you create the new internal lot lines. You can't just blow past them and have water go schlepping through different across lot lines into other people's homes and lots. So go ahead and click again. You'll see that there's some other additional things you're going to have to do is probably route the water through the flags on the flag lots and maybe add drainage easements across what you'll already have joint access easements on these driveways. But anyway, so you're creating a little subdivision with drainage that needs to kind of respect the property boundaries on this. So it does complicate this a little bit, but that it's an important part of the process. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, this is the least favorable scenario. You're draining to a neighbor, and so what you do, click one more time, and it'll show the details on this. This is where you don't want to you want to prevent water from creating drainage problems on your neighbors at this scale, 17,780 up to 1 acre for resubs, and then in pretty much anything site plan light multifamily up to 1 acre. We don't want this scenario, so you would to be just kind of undetained or uncontrolled. And so you'd have the engineering required for that and the site plan exemption. One more click, and you'll see that we actually, hit the down arrow. And so we actually, with stakeholder input, are offering the modified rational method to calculate detention volumes. Okay, let's go to the next one. Just showing the same thing as the case for multifamily. You have the same 3-step process. Since the impervious coverage is a little higher, there's more concentrated runoff, so we're not offering that 17,780 exemption below that. Let's go to the next slide. And go to the next slide. Yeah, just kind of click through about 5 or 6 times until we get to the 1 acre site. I'm gonna focus on this for the storm drain connections, and so. Right now, we heard from stakeholders it was a big deal that you might have to connect all the way to 550 feet away. Click one more time. And there's the site plan light project, which is for example. And so these are all the other ones we're assuming are all re-subdivisions. Click one more time. The old one more time. Yeah, the old. There we go. Stop. The old rule was any scale of project. It's a site plan or a resub or a subdivision. You're going to have to connect all the way up to 550 feet away. Well, that could be a $500,000 or more project, and for this scale, it was really recognized that that's probably not proportionate, not required. So click again, and so we have a new, one more time maybe. So one more down arrow. Okay, and so that we cap the maximum connection at 300 feet for every project, all projects. And we made it where there was no connection at all for the re-subdivisions up to 1 acre. Those site the residential infill. Click one more time, and if you're less than a half an acre site plan like multifamily, also no connection. And then one more click, and you'll see that you only have to connect up to 50 feet away, which just effectively means you need to connect. You need to connect if there's a pipe in front of your project. All right, let's go to the next slide. This just summarizes this. It'll be in your packet. It's the same thing I just said. Here's just an explanation of the modified rational method, and it shows we did sync up. The graph shows how we actually were able to use some mathematics to put a correction factor on modified rational method to make sure that the pond sizes that were calculated using modified rational method were really close to what you'd get with a more sophisticated hydrologic modeling package like PondPack or HEC-HMS. All right, go to the next slide. This just summarizes everything. So we wanted to simplify the drainage. we wanted to, which we heard over and over again, was a big factor for these small projects: cost, time, complexity. We're letting projects under 17,780 entirely be exempted by this process. And if your natural site conditions on a project that's above 17,780 for a resub or any kind of site plan light up to an acre, then great. You can use this very simplified path with minimal technical input. And then if the site conditions warrant it, because we wanted to protect surrounding properties, then you need to make sure you use a little additional care. And then we reduce those storm drain connections and offer the modified rational method. And my apologies, I can't believe I went. Not sure what happened to my system, but I'm sorry to put Lindy through that. But I appreciate your subbing in for me greatly. And let's go to the last slide. That's my name and information in case you need it. And let's go down to the next one. And that's our survey.
All right. Wow. We've got some questions rolling in. I just want to take a breath and say thanks to our team and thanks to everybody here for hanging in with us. I see the majority of our attendees were able to stay on the call and take in this important information. So all right. So we're now entering into the Q&A portion, and we did have several questions that came in through the chat box, which received written answers. So I'm not going to go over the ones that were answered, but let's go ahead and take a look at the new questions coming in. So reminder, if you'd like to submit a question, you can type it in the Q&A box there's a little image at the bottom of your screen with a question mark and it says Q&A. That's where you put your questions in. Or if you want to verbally ask a question, you can click the raise hand button also at the bottom of your screen and I'll ask you to unmute and you can ask your question. So I'll get started with our first one in the box. If you are doing home two and adding new lot lines, will the new lot drainage to adjacent lots, the old site, not the neighbors, will that trigger an engineering review? So I guess within your original lot, you subdivide it and then it's going to drain into one of those subdivided lots. Will that then trigger an engineering review? Matt, you're on mute right now.
Sorry about that. I'm going to defer. I'm going to defer to Kenna and Lindy on this one. I'm not sure the answer to this one.
Did you catch the question, Kenny?
Yeah, the home two is when they're subdividing, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're gonna get an engineering review whether if you're over 17,780, right? Because only under 17,780 do we not really look at it. So you will get an engineering review. It will come to my team and we will look at it. And each lot needs to be draining to the right of way or the public drainage easement or pipe without going through another property. Then that's one of the slides that Matt showed previously.
And I think a lot of the projects aren't going to be 17,780, like a smaller project that just adds a lot line. And so that would be, you would not, there would not be a drainage, right, for that one.
Can you repeat that? If it's greater than 17,780, we do get a review. If it's less than 17,780, then we don't even look at it. So I guess if it's less than 17,780 and it's draining onto your neighbor, we don't look at it. So it's been determined that there's no adverse impact for properties for subdivisions of this size.
Right. There were, or maybe there were not. Yeah, it's not something that the city. It's small enough scale. It's similar to one building permit building next to another, building permit project, and we're not looking at that scale.
Alrighty. Thank you both. Our next question in the box, this is a little bit long, so I'm gonna take it slow. Um, from a civil engineering due diligence standpoint, would you say that the key early screening items are whether the lot drains to the street, whether it can be practically regraded to the street, and whether proposed lot lines create any new lot to lot drainage conflicts? Um, if the answer is no on one of those, should we take that as an early sign that the site might not qualify for simpler infill drainage?
That looks like a yes to me, but I'll again defer to Kenna.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we would do. We would look at it and we look at the existing grading. Is it already going to the street? Well, this is, and think, well, that's promising. What happens when they put the buildings on it? Is it still going to the street? That's great. Yeah, we don't want it to go through lots to get to the street because that's causing adverse impact on the property. So I would say that those are three really great things to look at. And what was the last question? If the answer is no on one of those, and I think the answer was all yes, right?
I think so, yeah.
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 Thank you for
Very
helping.
good. Yeah, that was a long question, but I mean, good
That was a good
points.
question.
And to whoever asked it, they clearly absorbed a lot of the content from our presentation. Let's see, it's telling me someone's hand is up, but I'm trying to see, is anyone's hand up? Any other questions with us today? Can we go back to that last slide that had the QR codes, please? I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah.
go ahead and
Yeah.
close us out. It seems like we're done with our questions. We've gone through all of our questions, and I just want to thank everyone again for being here with us. We always appreciate your questions and the participation here. And if you have a moment, one favor for us is let us know what you thought. We want to know, what did you think of today's presentation? Is there anything that you'd like us to do differently? We're here for the comments. How did we navigate our tech issues? I think we did a pretty decent job, but let us know, what did you think? And then also check out that Land Development Academy webpage if you haven't yet. We'd love to see you at a future engagement. We've got our coffee chat, like I mentioned, in May. Hopefully, some of our subject matter experts that were with us today will make it to the coffee chat and we can talk some more with them. Um, and that's it. Do we have any closing words from Matt or any of the other, Lindy or Kenna, if you guys have anything you'd like to say to close us out?
Well, thank you again also for hanging in there with these technical difficulties. My hat is off to Lindy and their whole team for picking up after those technical difficulties, and I appreciate that. And I know this it's a little bit of a wonky topic, and I appreciate everybody's interest. And we're very happy to answer more detailed questions if you have them after the program.
All right. Thank you all. Until next time.